Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Refined Savage podcast. As always, we're going to do a little business here and then get down to business. So let's talk a little bit about our sponsors. Let's start off with our newest sponsor, Muscle Egg. Muscle Egg is the best protein drink out there as far as taste, as far as, bioavailability, as far as digestion. Muscle Egg has it all. Sounds crazy. Flavored egg whites. I know this sounds crazy. It sounded crazy to me the first time I had it, but I got to tell you, it is the best stuff I've had as far as protein drinks. Tastes are phenomenal, man. The chocolate tastes just like chocolate milk. It is great. It's safe. It's pasteurized. It's not raw. It's safe. Even if you're pregnant, you can drink it. You can make it into recipes. There's a little bit of sucralose in it as a sweetener, so there's no sugar added. And it comes in a jug, and it's not watered down at all. So if you just want to have a protein drink, there's no mixing, there's no shaking. You pull it out of the fridge, pour it in a glass, and you're ready to go. Each serving has about 10 egg whites in it, and it's basically straight protein. If you want 10% off your order for listeners of this show, you can check them out at muscleegg.com/refinedsavage/ and that will get you 10% off on your order. Viking coffee. If you're done with your protein drink for the day and need your coffee fix, Viking coffee is the way to go. I had some Old Man Strength this morning. That's usually what I start my day off with. But Evan sends me different flavors every month as well, so I have some of that as well. But this morning was Old Man Strength. That is the brew from the show. I think he said that was his most popular blend. So I highly recommend you check it out. Give them a holler at vikingcoffeeco.com. Use the code VikingCoffee10 at checkout and get 10% off. Warrior CBD. Everyone has their own CBD oil out these days, but the good ones are few and far between. Warrior CBD is fantastic. It's the best stuff I've ever used. Whether you have problems sleeping, problems relaxing, if you have muscle aches or pains, if you have a whacked out dog, it is just the best. Check them out at warriorcbdofficial.com. Use the code WARRIOR20 off at checkout. I promise you are going to be thrilled with the product and thrilled with the customer service. If you have any questions, speaking of customer service, reach out to Nancy on Instagram or at the website, and she'll be able to answer any of your questions you might have as far as your job and whether or not you can use it or not. Give them a shout out. Cerberus, if you need anything for your strength journey, be it strongman, powerlifting, Highland Games, arm wrestling, bodybuilding, Olympic weightlifting, whatever, Cerberus has it all. From the best sandbags on the market, to smelling salts, to tacky, to t-shirts, to belts, to wraps, to straps, they have everything you need if you are planning on lifting any kind of weights. Check them out at cerberus-strength.us. Use the code REFINEDSAVAGE10 at checkout for 10% off. Serious Steel, if you are outfitting any kind of gym, be it your home gym all the way up to a big giant commercial gym, Serious Steel has every piece of equipment you could possibly need at rock bottom prices with the best customer service around. These guys are athletes. They are great people. If you know Chad Clark, Chad's the one who got me hooked up with these guys. He is an employee of Serious Steel, and they are just the best. Anything I've ever needed, I go there first. And 9 times out of 10 they have it, and they have it for much cheaper than everywhere else. And they're just great people. Check them out, SeriousSteel.com. Use the code SAVAGE at checkout. Have you heard about this phony baloney meat shortage? Yeah, they're saying there's going to be a meat shortage coming again. So I know a brilliant way to fix this. Check out Serious Steel, or check out StayClassyMeats.com. Use the code SAVAGE at checkout, and you will get fresh, cold meat delivered directly to your home, anytime, day or night. Check them out. Tell them I sent you. All right, and finally today we have the Breath Belt, the newest piece of equipment that I love. Jesse at the Breath Belt is obsessed with the Breath Belt, and it shows in the product. It's fantastic. He's got a new one coming out right now. I suggest you check it out. For those people who go to my gym, they already know that our Breath Belts are going to be taken away soon, so they have to buy their own, only because it's my Breath Belt, and I want to keep it nice. So if you want to check out the Breath Belt, check them out at thebreathbelt.com. Use the code SAVAGE20, SAVAGE, all caps, 20 at checkout. Okay, guys, today on the show, we have one of my favorite people, Ed Cosner. Ed is a very high-level strength coach out of New Orleans, Louisiana. He's out of New Orleans now. He's formerly from Houston, but he's out of New Orleans, Louisiana, one of my favorite places on the planet. So Ed has worked with some of the players from the All Blacks, the New Zealand All Blacks, if you're familiar with rugby. He's also a former Highland Games amateur and now a Masters competitor. So the guy really knows his stuff. It was a great conversation. I highly enjoyed it, and I know you guys will too. So check it out, and we'll see you at the end. Ed Cosner on the Refined Savage podcast. Finally.
I know. We've been trying.
Forever.
Yeah.
I saw you had, this is your anniversary of the heart attack. 7 years has it been?
7 years.
What was the story? Give me the rundown on that.
So I've been having, after I had my Achilles issues in 2012, I had 11 surgeries to clean out the infection. The doctor in San Antonio was an asshat. And, I got cleared. I couldn't get cleared by the anesthesiologist, so I had to go see a cardiologist, almost like a Miles, Wetzel thing. And,
right.
But they cleared me, said I was fine. And 2 years later, I was running through the airport after trying to make a flight up in Dallas, and I kept sweating really bad, grabbing my knees, catching my breath. I'm like, geez, I got to get in better shape than this. Maybe a couple of sets of 8 and a squat would help. maybe the whole one set of 20 would help. But that was on a Monday. Friday, I had a great workout, everything else, and when I went home, after I ate, I kind of laid down on the couch a little bit. My wife had went to bed, and that's it. My heart decided that was enough of giving me warnings. So I stood up, and I guess the pressure dropped, and my heart stopped, and I hit the floor. They told me that kind of restarted my heart, and I ended up crawling on my hands and knees into the room to wake her up. But it kind of went away. It kind of goes in passing.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe I just have indigestion. I sent her to go get me a soda so I could burp. And I went and took a shower. It's but it just kept getting worse. I ended up at the hospital and found out that I had my widowmaker was blocked. But the artery behind my heart, that's what had caused my heart the most problem. And the doctor there was really good. Of course, I ended up going to a med clinic because I wasn't waiting for the ambulance because it takes forever in Houston. And we got there, and the guy was like, "Well, how are you feeling?" I looked at him and was like, "Really? You're asking me this? I feel like crap." And he's like, "You're in the middle of a really bad heart attack. Is there a really good heart attack?"
Yeah, right.
So he gives me all this stuff. He's like, we're gonna send you across the street to the hospital. So I'm getting up. And he looked at me and was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I walked in this fucker." And
right.
He's like, "Yeah, well, you're gonna be gurneyed out of it." So, but they unblocked it, got everything going, and then told me I needed to bypass surgery. So ended up, they're not going to let you leave the hospital and come back in a couple of days. So
right, yeah.
But this is. Yesterday was my 7-year anniversary of the surgery. Today would be the anniversary where they make you get up out of bed. Right. The next morning, they make you get up out of bed and walk around.
Yeah.
Looking at the guy like, no, I'm good right here.
Isn't it funny, though, that, because we're meatheads, that, you feel like death, you're having all these symptoms, and normal people would be like, something's really wrong with me, and we're like, well, maybe I just need to add in more cardio. Maybe it's like there's always a strength fix to this problem.
There is. There's got to be. if squats can't cure it, then what the good is being alive?
That's right. That's right.
And of course, my wife rolls her eyes at me every time I say that. But I got lucky. I mean, the cardiologist, the cardiothoracic surgeon was like the top guy in Houston.
Yeah.
That just happened to be the one I was up next for him. And, got there, hospital, they're really good, but, and then all the other stuff, like my workout partner, Darren, they go 6'3", 250 pounds, 260-pound ex football player, Houston Police Department, Houston cop, retired, and he's looking through the halls of the areas at 4:00 in the morning because my wife had called him, and he's like, I'm looking for my brother. And they're like, you can't be here, sir. He's got a badge on the whole thing. He makes sure he had all this stuff. And they're like, okay, that white guy on a gurney can't be your brother. Maybe we go over there, could be your daughter-in-law, but that's not your brother, and he was like, no, but he like stood guard in my room, when people would come in and visit, and that was enough, and I needed rest or anything like that. Sally didn't have to be the bad guy. Darren would just run him out.
Yeah.
But I did have my first night, Andy Vincent, Spencer Tyler, and a couple other guys, all about the same size, were in the room visiting me.
Not much room for anything else.
No, we had the nurse laughing, just dying laughing and everything else. But I don't know. It's and then Ben Franks, my All Black player that I've been training for so long. I mean, he was right there the whole time. Dropped some money in my bank account to make sure I didn't have to go back to work real early, things like that. Of course, we did get a Skype call in the day before my surgery. And he was telling me that, you're going to make it, this and that, all this good, cheerful stuff. And he says, but if you don't, I'm like, what? And these nurses are like listening to this, the New Zealand accent. They're all over there just, oh my goodness. And he's like, if you don't, Sally said I can put a shipping container outside the gym and I can have all of your gear and all of your Milos and books, but I have to take all of your t-shirts too.
Yeah, right.
Over like, damn.
Yeah. Ruthless
for my gear, for my books,
but
for my Milos. I thought the Milos were going with me.
Get them buried with you. It's a good thing though, man, when that stuff happens and your true friends come out of the woodwork and you get a glimpse of how important you are to people.
Yeah, it's it really was. I mean, Miles was calling me all the time to help me out because we all know that
that's a blessing and a curse, though.
Yeah, Miles has been through some stuff. Yeah. and like Ryan Vieira would call me. Even James Parman would give me a call. Of course, James would just give me a call to give me a hard time.
Right. Yeah.
He's always got something to say, followed by
He had one of the best quotes ever in Highland Games. We were up in Alaska, and we were doing a Highland Games up there, and we were noticing that there was a lot of unattractive women in Alaska. So we're standing around after the games, and Larry Brock, I think it was, said, "Man, I can't believe how many ugly chicks are up here." And Parman turns around and he goes, "Boys, this is the final frontier, not Vegas." And that wraps up James Parman perfectly.
It does. That wraps up James perfectly. He's still because I still run the San Antonio Highland Games, and he's still my judge and my announcer. Now he's just my announcer, and people look at me like, you gave James a microphone?
Dangerous.
And free reign. I just walk off, and he does whatever the hell he wants.
When's the San Antonio Games?
First weekend of April.
First weekend of April. Okay, so, I know my wife went to Army Baylor and spent a lot of time in San Antonio, and she's been wanting to get back. So maybe we'll come down and check out the games or something next time.
Yeah. It's good turnouts, always had good
Yeah.
turnouts. Hopefully we haven't been able to have it the last 2 years. So hopefully we can be able to come back, from that. And it's kind of, for me, 15 years later, it's kind of like, I'm ready to kind of turn it over to somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a few guys that want it, but I want to make sure that it keeps. I mean, I took it from the normal, 15 years ago, backyard game, 8 fat guys smoking a cigarette, talking about glory days.
Yeah.
And to having, I mean, I've had like that Kengo Kabuta come all the way from Japan.
Yeah.
Had guys come from all over the place just to compete. Best one was having Kengo, Brady Miller, what the heck, Gene Flynn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Baker, Sean.
Yeah.
All of them, and Dickens, all of them going at each other, looking at me as they're the masters throwing the 16-pound sheaf, and they're looking at they're like, well, the guide wire is 36.6, and Parman designed the thing. He's like, yeah, it's 36.6. All right. They're like, I'll just move the thing up there. We're going over the top, and all of them went over the top 36.6.
Wow. Yeah.
It was like, all right, well, figure out who's first and who's second.
Right. Yeah. Those that's a group. I came up with Gene. We were both amateurs together, and
Okay.
yeah, so he was a hell of a thrower. And we've had Sean Baker on the podcast, and I didn't meet Dickens and Brady Miller until years later. But
okay.
where do you think Highland Games is going now? It's really interesting to watch now. To me, it seemed like at least the pro class was on the ropes before COVID. And now after COVID, I just don't know where it goes now. I mean, you got any?
I don't know either. And it was really hard. I mean, you guys, you had certain games you could get in. You had games you couldn't get in. It was hard to get in. It was almost like better being an amateur.
Yeah.
You weren't. The only thing was good was you got paid to go out there.
Right.
Make a little scratch, unless you had the free time like Parman to go all the way to Scotland for the month.
Yeah.
And he'd come back, with, pocket full of change and that. But I think it's hard. Not a lot of festivals. You wonder how many are going to survive.
Yeah.
Have the pro class. It's trying to get sponsors, everything else. I mean, that's a hard part right there. And so to me, it's the masters class started really doing a lot more. Yeah. And kind of taking center stage at several games.
Well, I think, and I've said this before, and look, I was a pro. I'm going to be a pro for life. I support those guys, but the masters and the women's class are just much more entertaining right now.
Yeah.
They're
there wasn't
showmen.
There wasn't that many in the women's class for a while, and it seems like there's quite a few now. I mean, you had Summer Pearson and a few other ones, and that was about it. Petoskey's wife, and all of Mindy.
Yep.
And then, they would throw in the Hobson girls.
Yep.
And then it's kind of, faded out. And then, it seems to be quite a bit more. I never had women's class until few years in, and like kind of a couple of girls approached me. I'm like, all right, but it's going to be a good show. I don't need another C class.
Yes.
Right. Guys in shorts and that kind of stuff. I need and man, they took center stage. I mean, they'll sometimes have a bigger crowd following them around than the A's will. Yeah. It's Sunday the Masters come out, they put a good show on. And even in Pleasanton, that was the first time, there was like separating all that. And we put a good show on, and Steve even told us that we put a good show on. And that was the bottom line is, interact, have some fun. There's some guys, especially some of the pros, very competitive. You're competing for money, but you can't just throw and then go stalk off to the side and stand. The same thing for telling some of the amateurs, some of the other classes, like, listen, I know you guys want to talk about the girls and the beer that you drank last night, but let's not do it right in front of the crowd.
Yep.
And by the way, the people sitting in the stands that paid, they didn't pay to see your nasty ass move over to the other side.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned from Parman was it's about entertainment.
Yes.
Like the guys want to, and I know because you need scores, because I do, they want to throw the heavy hammer. They want to throw both stones. And James's thing was, okay, I'll let you, because I really do turn it over to him on stuff like that. And I'm like, I'll let you, but we're going to throw the Bremar stone, the heavyweight, the heavy hammer in the morning before anybody really starts fitting into the stands. Then we'll throw the open stone, the lightweight, the light hammer, because people want to see stuff go far.
Yep.
They see the two hammers and they're like, yeah, okay. What's the difference? Yep. They don't know because they never picked it up. So, trying to make it entertaining. And I always wondered, I asked James before, asked a few other ones, because much as I love my buddy Mike Babb, he used to get so angry at me because he has these games in November in Austin, right? First time he has them, I'm on the front of the Austin American Statesman. We're up in Dallas competing at the Arlington games. We're staying out at his mom's house out in Fort Worth, where Mike's a hero out there from,
right.
Playing at Trinity Euless, playing in the NFL, playing at UT. Who's on the front of the paper picking a caber? I'm on the front of the paper picking a caber. He's like, looks at me. His mom brought it in. She's like, look, Ed, you're right here on the front. And Mike just looks at me. He's like, 5.5 hour drive back to Austin. It was very quiet.
Yeah. I've got to reach out to him. I'd love to get him on the show. Mike was my hero growing up. I was a kid in the 80s playing center for my local football team outside of Cleveland, Ohio. I wanted to be Mike Babb,
Yeah. Yeah. That was the thing. He and I would travel a lot. We traveled a bunch of games and we just kind of hit it off really well, and got to have a traveling partner,
Absolutely.
kind of like your old boyfriend, Kerry and Brock, roommates, lovers, whatever they were.
Yeah.
But
that was but that was one thing that we were very aware of, Kerry and I and Craig and Chafin, was that we were very lucky to have this quote unquote occupation, and it was determinant on how well you entertained the crowd and made them come back next year and pay more money. And we were very aware of the fact that we were sitting a couple feet from the crowd. So these weren't conversations. These were conversations we were having specifically to entertain the people behind us eavesdropping, So we were very, very aware of that, and people would come back for years, and, we pretend like we knew them like old pals, but there was the same crowd at all these games all over North America, but you just pretended like, hey, I remember you, and they'd come back every year and spend that money.
Yeah, and that's it. That's how the festival is going to continue to stay. How to keep making money, got to keep open. I tell the guys, because I've had them, I've listened to them bitch and cry about something. It's like, that $30 entry fee, it really didn't drop much of a dent in the insurance and everything else that's that it takes to run a festival, not just the backyard game, the whole festival. But yeah, Babb and I, we traveled so much, and I talked to him, and when he got screwed over at the car dealership, he was really kind of upset, and we were talking. I'm like, dude, for 2.5 years, 3 years now, we have traveled together, 10-hour drives, 8-hour drives sometimes. And all we talk about is weight training, because I wanted to know everything that he did weight training wise with Daniel LeDuc at UT, with Redman, with the Browns, and everything else. I'm like, why don't you train people? Yeah. And that's what he started doing. And he's still doing it. Loves it.
Yeah. when we're done here, I'm going to have to get his email off you and
give
him a holler, because I haven't talked to him. It's been at least a decade, when he was.
He's like me. He's coming back to throw.
Is he really? That's awesome.
He's got 2 knee replacements, and he's throwing.
Yeah, I remember watching him they used to have these arm wrestling competitions on like ESPN back in the day, and he was all
about those.
Yeah, that was so awesome.
That one, and when they had when they would go out to almost like the almost like the Superstars competition they had back in the day with the actors and actresses, and they had it because I still remember Sap doing 385 for like forever on an incline with a big old wad of chew in his mouth. So it was the same thing. Those guys were entertaining. They were fun. They were fun to watch. They were fun to kind of be around because I started working NFL training camps in the 90s. I worked NFL training camp with Houston Oilers, and the first year Jeff Fisher was there. And my job at 6 in the morning was to wake up the offensive linemen, bang on the doors, air horn. That's what I was given. Air horn, boom, boom, boom. So after about 3 days, Mike Munchak, Bruce Matthews, and a few other ones had enough. They beat me. They taped me like cattle, my feet and my ankles together, picked me up, walked me into the chow hall, threw me up on the table in front of Jeff Fisher and the coaches because they sat up at the front. There's your air horn, boy, and they just walked off. Somebody gonna help me here? Somebody gonna help me? Can I get a little help here?
Those were different, it doesn't matter whether it was football or like the pro wrestlers. It was just a different breed of human, of men back then. It was the late 80s, mid 80s and into the 90s. And these guys they were larger than life, whether it was, like the WWF guys or the pro football players, or even like the World's Strongest Man guys, Jean Paul and Kaz. It was just, man, I don't know what that attitude came from or why there were so many of those characters back then, but
they were characters.
Yeah.
And they were fun to watch. They were entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
They were after each other. You knew Kaz was going to get pissed off at somebody.
Right.
Usually David Webster.
Yes. I've been pissed off at David Webster myself, so I understand that.
I think everybody has. Poor David.
Time for another.
But I just, I like all of that, and that's what I grew up in. I mean, my dad taught me. I started lifting in the 70s, mid to late 70s, with my dad at the YMCA's in Detroit, and the guys there were, there were a couple of old NFL guys, an NFL player who was a thrower at Penn State. He was a linebacker for the Lions. So he would, on Saturdays we learned how to throw shot put, discus, and everything else. That's where I kind of really like that because I never was that big,
right?
Structurally wise, my wrists aren't that big or anything else like that. I did well in powerlifting, and I won some championships, and posted me a nice 854 pound squat, but I wasn't ever going to go past that.
Yeah.
And that hurt like hell too. So by the way, I didn't want to do it anymore, but to see some of these guys now, like Eddie Hall and them, you see them, they're like, oh, just stroking out, 800 pounds, that, or the deadlift now. These guys are regularly at strongman. They're pulling 900 pounds like it's nothing.
Yeah.
I don't want to leg press 900 pounds.
Yeah, right. Oh, and it hasn't been that long ago. I can remember probably 20 years ago where it was like Ed Cohen and Danny Wolber were the only guys pulling 900. And then all of a sudden now people are pulling it all the time.
Normal. Yeah. People are pulling it all the time. And I don't know. I mean, I pulled on 800. It didn't go anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
My best like 733, but
but
I found the Highland Games late when I was at Baylor as a graduate assistant coach. Yeah. And one of the guys that was there ran a game, and a little small game outside of Waco. Yeah. And it was like, I'd seen it in Milo. I'd seen it in there. Randy Strawson always wrote about it, but I could never figure out how to get involved with it. I went up once and watched, and that kind of stuff up to Arlington. I went out to Pleasanton and watched, and that could never figure out how to get involved until I saw him. And I was training my softball girls. We were doing conditioning work, and they were like, "What the heck is that down there?" Like, "Oh, that's Coach Boyens. He does these funny games that they wear a skirt." Like, a kilt? They're like, yeah, that's what he calls it, but it looks like a skirt. I'm like, yeah, okay. This is I'm like, he's like, hey, he competes. I'm like, really? And he's got some stuff out there he's throwing. I looked at them. I'm like, y'all are done. I'll see you tomorrow for weights. I just gravitated down the hill and, kind of started doing it, and, had fun. I have fun. I mean, like to be more successful, everything, but I have fun. And then, like I said, I asked James, he's like, well, you put a good show on, big old boy with a goatee, and you interact with the crowd, and you can turn a caber, and you can do this. So you're going to get invited to games because you're a good product out on the field.
And I think that's one of the things that's missing. We all had to, pre-internet, you all had to find that weird guy who was in your neighborhood or maybe 50 miles away from you, who you just heard did these games, and you have to go search them out. My guy was the bus mechanic at the high school I went to, and I saw him throwing this stuff, and I was my first year in shot put, and I found his phone number, gave him a call, said, hey, I want to do this. And he said, well, I was 15. He said, you need to be able to bench 300 and squat and deadlift 405. I was like, fuck. So he said, call me when you can do that. So I waited 3 months, called him back and said, I hit all those numbers. Now, can you shit? I hadn't hit any of those numbers. He agreed to take me out and throw. Yeah, there was just nowhere to go. It wasn't like you could just get online and reach out to people.
I tell the kids I train now, I'm like, well, you guys are lucky.
Yeah.
You can get online and watch videos. You can get them to coach yourself.
It pisses me off because I go to track meets now, and when I was learning to throw the shot put, I didn't have a coach, so I had literally like a 7-second video of Stoltz gliding in the Olympics in Korea, and that was how I trained myself to glide. And now there's no excuse for these kids to have bad technique, because you could watch hours and hours of YouTube videos for free.
Yeah, exactly. There's hours of videos. Dane Miller from Throws University, Dane puts up a lot of good stuff. But it's the same thing for recruiting. I mean, you look on Twitter with some of those, because I follow a lot. I didn't know there was that much, and it's really kind of gotten big. The high school throws in Texas, it's gotten huge, and the coaches that are on there and everything else, and it's like, all right, and you look. I mean, there's no excuse to not have a college scholarship for some of these middle of the road, kids, and getting better, but. Yeah, you got a phone. I mean, I always tell people, they're like, oh, you didn't get pictures of this. Like when I was with the Spurs, I'm like, dude, I didn't have a phone.
Right.
I mean, I didn't have a cell phone. And the cell phones back there were, it was a brick, that Nokia, that blue brick thing. Like they didn't take pictures. Yeah, I'm like, I just don't think like that I kind of experience it. Now, not saying that I wouldn't like to have pictures and videos and stuff from back there lifting and everything else. But, you grew up around the same kind of guys as I did with that. Could you imagine pulling a camera or your phone out and videoing set it up for your heavy set of squat and everything else on a bed? One of those old guys would have dropped a 100-pound plate on it. Oh, my bad.
I still feel weird doing it. It's just like, it's something you got to do.
I do too, and I know that it's part of what I have to do to, for business and for everything else. And I'll go through a whole workout. And literally, I will go through an entire workout like, oh crap, I didn't get a video of that.
Yes,
I didn't get a picture.
Yes, I do the same thing.
I'll load it and I'll start looking. I'm like, well, I'm just going to take a picture of this part of it. So I'll load that part of the bar. The other end of the bar might have one plate on it. And I'll put my sleeves or my belt by it or my training straps by it. I'm not loading the damn thing all the way back up again.
Yeah.
But I forget, and then I put it up. And I'm like, okay. And I really don't think, I guess with my, with how old I am, and that's that, I just don't think about that. And I went to a rugby match in Houston, is USA versus Scotland. And there's Scotland fans, everything else over. And I got people coming up, man, I've been following you on social media for years. Man, you're really good stuff you put up. Great work with Ben and Owen Franks. And I'm like, okay, shit, really? I just kind of sit there, and then after the match, and USA won, and I had 2 players on the USA squad and a couple of guys on Scotland that I knew, and guys are coming up that are, I just got done watching play. They're like, dude, I really liked a lot of the stuff you put up, man. You put up some more stuff for the hooker. You put up some more stuff for this. And I'm like, wow, okay. I don't, and I laugh about it because in the United States, here in the U.S., unless you have an accent, you're really, it's hard to break into the sport of rugby.
Right.
Even with my credentials that I have with it.
Yeah.
I get on a plane out of LAX headed to New Zealand, and at least 2 of the flight attendants are going to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
They're going to know that I'm heading over to train Ben and Owen. Yeah. The immigration guy, at least one of them are going to be like, hey, you going to get those boys right for the season? You got to get them right for the All Black season? I know you're here for it. I'm like, yeah. So, and those guys are fun. I know those are athletes you would enjoy training.
Yeah. I've got he's another guy you've talked about me reaching out to, and I need to do that as well.
Yeah.
And stop being so lazy, get a hold of him. How did you get involved with rugby to begin with, being an American?
Yeah. Well, I met a coach, Ashley Jones, who's a strength coach, and it was in rugby league, which is a little bit different, but he was in Australia. I met him in '95, back when the NSCA clinics were fun to go to.
I'm doing the virtual one this year.
Oh my God. I know Brian Mann will get after me, and rightfully so. He's like, if you want to change it, swing a hammer. Like, I'd have to kick all you scientists out.
Yeah.
Anybody with a PhD in front of their name, gone. But it's
make it more like Summer Strong, and more people go to it,
Yeah, that's why. There's a couple hundred there. But yeah, I started talking to Ashley, visit him, and in 2006 I went over to Christchurch, New Zealand, to work training camp for him for 6 weeks, and that's when Ben was a second year. He was a first year professional, so he was about 18, 19 years old. His brother Owen, who's an unbelievable player, he was just a punk kid in the academy at the end of the field. No one's going to beat me for saying that, but he was just a punk kid at the there. But there were some greats on that team, like All Blacks. So the Crusaders would be the NFL level of rugby, Super Rugby it's called. So what I saw, like the big guys, the way I saw them being trained was really opposite of what I believe a big guy should be trained. Especially guys that play that. I mean, Ashley's great, but he didn't understand, being a 260-pound guy, 250-pound guy. But he did do, some strongman circuits, and that, but they were too light. And I remember Terry Todd always talking to me about, because Terry's one of my mentors and all, always talking to me about, the thing has to be heavy enough that they can't run and get out of control. That's what happened to Franco Colombo when he was, when he got hurt. Terry's like, I kept telling them they needed to be on an incline or heavier so that they couldn't go, too fast. So, just trying to find that in between. And I guess, a lot of the players really gravitated towards me. I really had a lot of fun. And after camp was over, I was in the airport. I was flying up to Auckland. I spent a week and a half with Pat Hellier and his wife.
Oh yeah, Pat.
When Kirsten was still training Valerie Adams.
Yeah.
So I went up there, but when I was in the airport, Ben sits down with me. He's like, hey, guys, the boys really liked all the stuff that you did. They liked, talking about the strength, because the front row requires strength. He says, the back row, like your NBA guys, because, I spent from 99 to 03 with the Spurs, winning, 5'10" with no jump shot, winning 2 NBA championship rings. Got some nice rings.
That's nice, man.
He's trying to pry the diamonds out of him. But, he's like, so we would just kind of talk through a bunch of stuff, and that was it. I really, the head coach really liked what I did and how I interacted with the players, and because the players were going to him saying that, so he tried to get me onto USA. They didn't want anything to do with me, whatever. And then fast forward to 2010, Ben and I started talking again, and I talked to him here or there, always give him some ideas. And then when the earthquakes hit in Christchurch in 2011, early 2011, Ben contacted me because the guy that was doing his private work, because he had already told the strength coach for the team to piss off, and he just didn't like the training. So they weren't going to touch him. He's an all black, and him and his brother. And he was like, I want you to do my training. Okay. And really study the sport, just like anything else, the physics that go in it. I know you really like the physics of like the throwing. So the physics of that front row, the physics, what they're doing, and then match it to the strength work that they need to be doing, the fitness work that they need to be doing. I mean, 2011, I really wish there would have been kettlebells back then, because man, it would have been great for him to get around stuff like the kettlebell snatching instead of the dumbbell snatch. I like that kettlebell snatch so much better. The swings, and the only thing he had was Bert had that Hungarian core blaster.
Yeah, I had one. I think I still have it somewhere.
I love mine. So Ben, right after they won World Cup in 2011, Ben flew me down for 6 weeks to stay with him. And that was it for me for that. Everybody started, equating what I did with Ben. Cause they didn't do like a lot of agility work. And I brought a packet of agility program that I got from the 94 strength coaches conference by the guy that was the strength coach at Tulane. And it was just, a thick packet of every cone drill you can imagine.
Yeah.
I brought it out, and so I was, we were doing some stuff, and his skills coach says, "Hey, well, in rugby, we don't do that. We do this." I looked at him, and I kicked the cone over. I'm like, he looked at me like he thought I insulted him. I'm like, dude, that cone ain't nailed down. It's not glued down. Move it.
Right.
Change it to what you need, because that's all you have to do. The idea is there. Just change it, and that's how we kind of did it. Ben really liked what I did. And then that next year, they had a new strength coach come in. So he was doing that stuff. And I was fighting all the infections in my Achilles that I ruptured while I was there. And at the end of the season, he was like, "Hey, I want you to do my strength training again." Because he had gotten too far on the strength side and not enough on that explosive side. And then I started training him. And then his brother, Owen, started training with me. And Owen was like, he was getting to a point where, you hit enough people with your shoulders and you do enough things with your shoulders don't want to snatch anymore. Yeah. And we both know that the snatch is a great movement.
Yeah.
High pulls, all right, great for that production of force. You still got to absorb it, but where are you going to get that from? I'm like, there's other ways of producing force. You get some good high pulls. I said, start from pulling, mid, hip and mid thigh, but you got to touch your chin.
Yeah.
You go down below your knee, you go down to the top of your knee, then you can pull just under your pecs, but it's got to go under your pecs. I don't want to see it just go to your belly button. That's a whole different exercise.
Right.
Yeah, but I got to get this. I'm like, yeah, well, here's a medicine ball. Let's throw. And they both like it. They really like that med ball. And it's like, okay, that works much better for the big guys.
Yep.
And then you were big, you were a big, thick guy when you were throwing.
Yep.
That mass moves mass and everything else. Of course, we had a little too much mass sometimes.
Yeah, we got carried away with that for sure.
Got carried away with that, but knowing how you feel, and you were athletic. You were, very athletic. Knowing you can only run so much, so some of these circuits come into play. And I always tell them, like, you can get fit, not running all the time. You're 250, 260 pounds. You travel, you play for 10 months out of the year. And that's what people don't realize. The rugby season for these guys, especially at the international level, is 10 months.
Wow.
And I would have to write, because Tommy Moffitt at LSU.
Yeah.
He sat down with me one day. We were talking, and he says, "How do you write that?" And I started, kind of going over it, because I believe in being strong all year long.
Yeah.
And always trying to get strong, but, not the big volume, everything else. So, we kind of talked through. He said, well, you have to think, if they're going to South Africa to play, I know that they're going to go to Australia, and then they're going to take this long 12, 14-hour flight to South Africa. Most of my big guys are going to be tight, locked up.
Yeah.
So we're going to do this. I know that the bars don't spin really well in South Africa where they're at. So we go to more heavy power bodybuilding kind of thing, or just bodybuilding.
Right.
You know, call it whatever you want, you know, but seated presses and everything like that, there ain't a damn thing wrong with them.
Nope.
And, you know, especially if I'm trying to keep muscle mass on. So they'll play there for 3 weeks, and their next trip might be either to Argentina or all the way up to England.
Yeah.
You know, they'll be on the road for 6-7 weeks in international play. So trying to get that, but same thing though is like the Thursday. Yeah, they played on Saturday. The Thursday before Rugby World Cup 2015 final, both Owen and Ben both squatted well over 500 pounds for some reps, and both ran over 2 miles in the game.
Yeah.
You
and
know,
they're high-level athletes and can handle it, you know?
Yeah, they can handle it. You know, I get this idiot now. I mean, I left the New Orleans rugby team. Yeah. And, you know, the guy they brought in, oh, you're strong enough. You don't need him. Like, no, you're never strong enough.
Never strong enough.
Unless you're an elite level, like Kovacs in them, you know, for throwing. I mean, if you're that level, then there's going to be a point where you know, you're strong enough on that. We got to get some other things going. But in the off season, screw that.
Do you remember the old Ring website before social media?
Yeah.
And I remember guys on there all the time talking about, well, you know, the strength, you know, getting strong has detriments, and if you know you're concentrating too much at getting in strong. And look, those guys, you know, talking about Adam Nelson, he was benching in the 5s in college. The Germans were benching 700, and how strong is too strong? You know, are we that? If you're not at that stage, you probably have some more strength work to do.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, but they also, you know, they squatted here, they squatted there, you know, this, that, and everything else, because everybody, you know, now is like, oh, you gotta go ass to grass. I'm like, you know why a weightlifter does that? So he doesn't, because if he can squat that low, that means he doesn't have to pull the bar that high.
Yeah, right.
Powerlifter squats to 90 degrees because shit, that's where you got to squat to. I'm not squatting lower than that. I'm etched down to there. You know, we can do this. And it's like 2000, I can't remember, maybe 15, 14. I talked to the scrum coach for the All Blacks, kind of the guru of the world. And I went up to Chicago. They were playing up there, and he and I talked. We went into his room. It's a proper you know, New Zealand English guy. Can I get you a hot tea? And he opens these. Part of his thing is he gets 2 tea kettles where he goes in his room. He's got this whole big old thing of hot teas. I'm like, shit, yeah, all right.
Right.
But we sat in there and we talked about different things. And we talked about the strength in the squat. And then I'm like, I want their hands in a little bit more. I don't want their powerlifting with their hands out. I want their hands in a little bit tighter. I want those shoulders flexible.
Yeah.
He's like, well, how does that work in the squat? I'm like, because if your thoracic spine and your scap and your shoulders and your wrists aren't healthy, you can't hold it in there and you're going to lean forward. Oh, like, well, when we scrum, don't you want to reach out and kind of going back through the physics of it? He's like, oh, it's like, yeah. So we'll talk about like barbell rows now. Oh, yeah. I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, well, I got my players, you know, the guys are, you know, they're doing, I'm like, listen, if you show me the video of this one guy that I know him doing an 80-kilo barbell row, I'm going to cry right now. And he looks, he goes, that's not good. I'm like, let me pull up a video on my phone. I'm like, here's me doing 180 for a set of 5.
Yeah, right.
And he looks, he's like, but your back doesn't move. That's what I want. Like, no, my back doesn't move. Yeah. My hips don't move. That's strong.
Yep.
And he's like, okay. I was like, you have to think, like, for me in that scrum, the 8 guys on 8 guys, these 8 guys are producing 1.5 tons of force forward. The first 3 spines in the front, those are the ones that are absorbing that 1.5 tons of force.
Right.
Behind them is almost another ton of force pushing, those 5 guys pushing. So if those 3 guys that are hitting each other, that are the contact point, if they're not stupid strong, they're going to break.
Yeah. Yeah.
So deadlifts, pulling, Ben, we do with him would be, we could squat to, mid-season. We're still going to squat, but we back off a little bit and we start deadlifting more.
Yeah.
He loved to deadlift. He felt like it kept his back and legs strong. And then we would have, we would do that. He would single leg squat on that day, so he didn't beat up his lower back too much, and have a blast. I mean, Evan Marcus went out and watched him train when he was, Ben was still in London Irish, and, sat there and talked and everything like that, told him what he was going to do and everything in London. And Evan was like, there's no way in hell my guys would do all that practice after that kind of a weight session.
Yeah.
And I laughed. I just found them the other day, and I had my wife make copies of it. I have training programs from the 89, 88, 89 Denver Broncos.
Right.
When Al Miller was there.
Yeah.
Split snatch. You mentioned telling an NFL player to do split snatches?
Talking to Evan, you'd be lucky if you can get these guys to, he had, I don't know any of these NFL players, I think it's hard for me because, Evan will mention someone and I'll have to ask my son who he is, but, the guys that trained with Evan during COVID last year and just said, screw it, I'm going to lift and I don't care about it. The one kid, I guess, is now like one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. And my son, Evan, came to the gym to hang out one day. And my son's like, how did this guy get so good? And Evan said, he lifted with me for a whole year getting ready for the season. I mean, he's improved by leaps and bounds, according to my son. So, trying to get these guys, these high-level athletes to do the work, there's no more Mike Babbs. The Mike Babbs are few and far between.
Yeah, it's kind of really what it seems like. And, here in rugby in the United States, I get, some older European players. They're on their way out. They're just trying to make a little bit more scratch. But some of the younger guys that are coming out of college, and I'm trying to get them to understand, you got to be this, you got to be that. And I get pushback. I'm like, okay, you do realize that 7 players, along the way from the All Blacks have asked me for advice, have trained with me, or, so in one way or another. Yeah. And that 2 of the greatest at their position train with me all the time.
Yeah.
And they want to be strong and that's what they didn't get before. They didn't get that where they were strong or they were doing that. They do it in college. Most of the programs are very strength-based in college.
Yeah. I
don't know anymore, though. It seems like everybody's got a, $1,500 Tendo unit attached to, every rack, 25, 30 racks. I'm like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, right.
They got a rack that tells them how fast the bar moved, and which is great during different parts of the season. I mean, I got Bert. Bert sold me a Tendo unit, because I didn't have a training partner for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
That way I didn't, when it was in season on that Thursday, because like James and I would lift on Monday, Thursday, and jump and snatch, grip, high pull on Thursday. And, we wanted to be quick. We wanted to be this. And, I got that. It helped James and I, making sure that we weren't going too heavy, but we didn't bring it in on Monday on our heavy day.
Right.
I know if I don't make a clean, or even if on a high pull, because I don't catch that often. I'll catch with a log, and I catch a lot with the I've fallen in love since Evan and Donnie Thompson and Evan both taught me with the kettlebells.
I love them. Yeah,
Donnie really, it was kind of piqued my interest in him. When I went up there, Evan really took me through some great stuff with them. And I've turned into, because I'm always looking for fitness within my strength.
Right.
I get bored if I'm doing barbell rows and I don't have something to do. I get bored. So I do a heavy set of barbell rows. I sit down with one kettlebell, or I'll kneel. I'll either do a Z press or a kneeling press. And I'm going to do, the higher reps on it, just trying to push a bunch of blood in there.
Yeah.
And like the swings and for me, being able to do cleans that way,
right.
I like them single arm, and that, but to be able to snatch again, because I like snatching.
Yep.
The bar, Yeah, up to about 70 kilos. Yeah, okay. Anything over that, my shoulders don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm not helping myself by being in pain. I thought it was cool when I was, 25,
Right. Yeah.
but it's not cool. So, but the snatch with the kettlebell, oh man, I can accelerate it. I can get a nice, snap on it. I feel like I got a little snap to it. And then, for me, it's always going to be a combination. It's going to be swing. It'll be the snatch, a shoulder press, and then an overhead squat with that one arm.
Yeah.
And looking in the mirror to make sure, because I swear when Dan John first taught me how to do some overhead carries, because I've thrown them a few times out in Utah and that, and like, oh yeah, my arm is all the way up, man, my delt's touching my ear, and then you get a video, you're like,
Yep.
that kettlebell was on my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was not, my arm was not extended. I know I got little alligator arms, but it was not extended.
Yeah.
Like,
I always am amazed by well, especially guys our age, with that weird bend in the arm, even when it feels like it's straight, My son, who's a thrower, that's how he snatches, there's no barbell snatch. All he just gets after the kettlebells, and
yeah.
And he'll mix up his regular barbell cleans with kettlebell cleans. And to me, it feels more like throwing. I wish I would have done more with them when I was throwing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they really weren't that mainstay where you could find them. You had Pavel, and that was it.
Yeah.
That was the only person you could. Now you can get them at the academy. Not very good ones, but you can get. You can find people. Getting rid of them and everything else. I mean, I prefer to clean with the kettlebells. I'll use a log sometimes. For that neutral grip.
Yeah.
But then I always find myself with the log going too heavy. That meathead comes out and rears its head, and there's times where that's okay, but there's times where it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good at picking, listening. So, but the kettlebell for me, the swing, doing the kettlebell, catching it, being able to catch it in a full squat, and then I'm always going to jam it over my head when I come back up, and that kind of stuff. And a couple of 4 sets of that. Don't even need a heavy one. I make sure that I'm doing 5, 8 reps.
Yep.
In between sets, all I'm doing is trying to catch my breath.
Sure.
And for me, that's the benefit. After the heart, everything else. And like I said, I want to be strong. I'm going to go next year. I want to go over to Scotland and do some of the stones. Cool. I want to do some of the manhood stones. I want to do the Inver stone at 60 years old. I'll be 60 in December. That kind of stuff. But I was really good doing the Highland Games and other sports because I was always fit.
Right.
Yeah. I don't like not being fit. And to me, I lost a lot of it because I couldn't catch anymore on the cleans. I just, my right wrist isn't going to let me. Yeah. I can snatch, but I'm not snatching heavy enough to really get something out of it. But man, I can have so much fun, and then for a while it was just a dumbbell. Yeah. And now with the kettlebell, because where the dumbbell, it seems like the dumbbell you have to, you have to decelerate as you're getting ready to get to the top, where you really would like to be accelerating.
Yeah.
All the way through. The kettlebell, I can accelerate all the way through. And
it snaps up there and rests on your arm.
Yeah. And I don't need a tendo unit to tell me that if it didn't, go all the way. If it didn't have that snap to it. So I don't need to have, something else there. And so then I just do, clean pulls. I still do my high pulls. I freaking love doing high pulls.
Yeah.
And because it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But,
it's funny. You talked about the NSCA conference and anyone with a PhD
oh, geez.
Remember the old Randy Barnes video of him lifting? He had that technique video. It was all power bodybuilding.
Yes, it was all power bodybuilding.
And you do look, I get it. And I know that having that degree and having that certification is important, but I think we're missing a lot when we're spending so much time the minutia of, is this the ideal way to train?
Right.
As opposed to, let's just train. Let's make this hard. Let's get a little meatheady. Let's put my son is at work right now. He's training for some summer throwing meets. When he's done with his job, he's going to run home. Should you be having your throwers run? Probably not. But you know what? He's 16 years old. That's not going to hurt him.
It's not going to hurt him. It's not going to hurt him. I talked to a guy the other day. We were talking. He's like, how'd you get into this? I'm like, there was a article in a strength and health magazine showing this guy at St. Bonaventure University in the 70s. The normal 70s big, all upper body, black band lawn shirt. With the collar, standing with the Sansa slacks.
Yeah.
He was an assistant strength coach for like training camps and all that with the Buffalo Bills back when OJ was there. So he was the strength coach at St. Bonaventure, and he was also the cross country coach.
Yeah.
And you go back to like the programs I have one of Bob Ward's programs, and yes, he has a PhD, but he studied how hard you could hit the bag. Yeah. That he didn't study all the other stuff.
Yeah.
He studied how hard you could hit the bag. He talked about, towing. Where the surgical tubing, pulls you. He didn't have that then. He had he talked about hooking a rope up to a guy and had a Briggs and Stratton motor that he had in a pulley system. Start that son of a gun up. Him and Bert Hill were talking at a thing, and Bert was with the Lions a long time ago, and then engaging it and having it tow the player to him.
Yeah.
Downhill running, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. The education and the science, that's all important, but it's just one small part of the equation.
Yeah.
Like I said, you could sit there and watch somebody in the gym, either jumping, pulling, doing a full clean or anything else. You're doing a squat and know that the bar's not moving fast enough, or the bar's kind of grinding, or if he's out of position,
Yeah.
To me, I can cheat the tendo unit. I can pull like hell at the last second and cheat it.
Yeah.
Same thing on the God. You see them now. It's one thing to jump and hit the vertex. It's another thing to jump on the mat. And you see them when they're doing it. Their like hands are down by their sides doing this, and they're pulling their toes up and everything else. That's not a jump.
I remember Louis saying one time that they were talking to him about, did he have tendo units there, and he may have them there now. But I remember him saying, I've been doing this for 40 years. I know how fast a guy's moving, if he's moving fast or not.
And you were a thrower and a throws coach. I mean, you can look at that like, you need a little bit quicker here. But then you have to find out where he broke down. You have to go back through it. Where did he break down? Was it out of the back? Were you just out of position? Were you just, hey, I need you to turn your hips just a little bit more before you start, generating force with your arm, or, hey, your left arm was just, might as well just put it in your pocket. You didn't even use it. So you have to be able to look at that as well, instead of just looking down at this iPad and thinking that. That's the thing, the Alabama fired Johnny Cochran. Oh, well, guys are just, they're too much in the weight room. Like, okay, you guys recruit the greatest athletes there are.
Yep.
You have unlimited. I mean, that's like Ohio State, Michigan. There should be no lull. You're just reloading.
Yeah.
That's important for bits and pieces of it. But there's something about, and it's the same thing for the weight rooms, but there's something about that meathead kind of attitude, even in the weight rooms. They're really pretty right now. And, one of our friend Bert, he makes some great ones and other ones. But I really do like the old Tennessee weight room when he put pictures up of that.
Yeah.
That separation, here's the platform, here's the squat racks, there's the bench press, there's the inclines, there's the, something no one has anymore. And Ben Frank started making equipment just because he's learned how to weld just for something to do while he was over in England before he moves back to he's coaching over there right now, but he'll move back to New Zealand in a couple of years. I'm like, I got to find one, and you're going to make a seated behind the neck press.
Yeah. Yeah.
with the stand on it, with the seat.
Right.
But, I talk about that. I'm like, guys, I didn't tell you had to hit your traps. You should be able to, but you got to get close. And if I was going to do it, that's a push press. So I'm, said at least get to the fat wrinkle.
Right.
Get to here. I mean, oh yeah, I'm like, it'll make your shoulders strong. They'll stay flexible. I mean, you look at the Ted Arcides, the Kenny Lanes.
Yeah. Yeah.
The guys that were benching 600 before bench press shirts were invented. And the wrist wraps were a piece of an ace wrap, wrapped around your wrist.
Yep.
They did, I still remember the pictures of Arcidi sitting there with 365, just, cranking them out that way. Had somebody hand it off to you. It was a good movement if you learned how to do it. And if you kind of took your time with it. Good. Everybody now, there's a old Eric Thomas, the guy, hip hop preacher, kind of guy, motivation speaker. And he did a thing at he's the one that does do you want it as bad as you want to breathe?
Oh yeah,
he does he does one at LSU and it shows guys doing behind the neck jerks, and bringing it back down, catching it, boom, popping it back up, weighted sit-ups with the dumbbell on an incline, and all the people like. And the only thing I can see are my strength coaching buddies making comments like, "Oh my God, we don't do that anymore." Like, why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Kid wants to put some weight up. You're an athlete. You're a competitive athlete. I don't care. I mean, even for me, my rugby, my backs, they were competitive. They wanted to squat 500 pounds.
Yeah.
That was a big deal to them when they did. And then I told them, not really low enough yet, but you're not power lifters. So, but I'd like you just a little bit lower. I don't want that much pressure, here or there. So we're going to box squat for a couple of weeks so you kind of get the idea of where you need to be, and it will come back. But they were doing strongman circuits. I did strongman circuits every Friday the entire summer here in New Orleans. And these guys were there. Yoke walks, Zercher carries, overhead, flipping the tire, jumping on the tire. Because I made them, they would have to jump on, jump in, jump on, come down, flip the tire. Boom. Yeah. And I had some guys that transform their bodies. And, some of the younger ones, we had a couple of guys that come in that were our rookies in that, and made a mistake of going out the night before. And I got this old Navy medic that plays for the team, like 33 years old, just making a huge transition with his body. And Doc, we call him Doc. Doc's just standing behind him. Come on, boy, let's go. The guy goes. Doc gets on there. He's almost 300 pounds. He's down to 265 today, he told me. But, he like stands right behind him. Come on, let's go. Yeah. Come on, let's go. This kid's like, always like, if you're going to puke over there, but get your ass moving. Let's go. And that competitiveness comes out, that building that team frame comes out. And then for me, it was coaches that didn't want to coach that are here. Just lazy. Yeah. And making comments after a while as we got closer to the season starting, well, they're spending too much time in the weight room. They're strong enough. Making comments during a meeting. Well, you get the ball at the 5 meter line. I need you to get in. There's not going to be a bench press in there to see how much you can bench and all this other stuff. Like, wow. Do you ever think that from where they started with the ball to where they got there had something to do with the weight room, or the fact that at 5 meters is just like a 5-yard run on a football play? That's just man up. Yeah. I'm going to stop you. You're going to go in, because Ben, and I always tell him, Ben hates when I'll schedule some higher reps. He hates me for it, but I do it like on a belt squat, and I'm like, say, hey, he had one where because now rugby doesn't stop, and it is continually goes. So they had the ball and they were trying to score. They needed to score. They were about 6-7 yards out, and it just keeps on going. 80 minutes comes up. As long as it's still in play, it's like soccer, extra time. You're just going to keep going. So he had started at like 75, 76 minutes. It's like 84 minutes in. And they, finally get done, everything else scored. I asked him, like, man, that was brutal. 5 meter line scrums, all this other stuff. He goes, yeah, I hate you when you schedule those, when you write in those 12 and 15 reps, but my legs feel really good right now. Yeah. 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 You got to have that at the end of it. you know, we always, I mean, because he wants to power lift now. I mean,
Right.
when he was in 2011, they were in Auckland a lot for Rugby World Cup, and Pat actually took some time and went out there excitedly. So, you know, Pat was out there with a bunch of the All Blacks, but Ben was learning how to throw in some of the Highland Games. He actually did a Highland Games.
Nice.
You know, I got him real interested in powerlifting. I got him geared up from Titan. Somehow we did a powerlifting meet. I thought it was just going to be him, but we did a powerlifting meet in 2014. Now he wants to do some more. And he's like, well, I'm going to, like, yeah, and then let's get you stronger. And that's what he's been doing right now, is a lot of like and he loves it, the power bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Power building. Everybody's got their own little thing for it. To me and you, that's just how you trained.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just like, oh, those are pendulum rows. I'm like, no, those are rows off the floor because it got heavy. And Glenn, God rest his soul, he'll tell you he did it, but he got whatever. You know, you either did that. No, that was Terry Todd. You know, everybody saw the picture in, you know, Inside Powerlifting with 455. You know, I want to do that.
You know, I don't know how many guys that I need to get on the podcast that say the same things when it comes to training athletes. You know, yourself and Evan and all these guys. They say the same things. You know, you've got a 16-year-old kid. He doesn't need to be running on a high-speed treadmill. He needs to be squatting and deadlifting and swinging kettlebells and doing calisthenics and flipping tires. I mean, if you can't see how flipping a tire translates to football or rugby, you've either never played football or rugby, or you've never flipped a tire. I mean,
and you shouldn't be training anybody.
I volunteered when my son was playing football. I volunteered to coach their weight room, and that's what I was thinking in my head is, you know what? Maybe instead of all these weights, because the kids weren't very strong and they're, you know, they were kind of small, and I said, maybe I'll just go and get some free tires, and they've got this big field house, and we'll flip tires all the time, you know. These kids will
I do
it
with mine. You know, these guys were like, I'm like, okay, you know, so like I said, you can make a tackle, clear the tackle, you get ball's going to keep going, they keep going. Well, I took 400 or 500 pound tires, tire, hit it, flip it, shuffle over, run up, hit it. Are you strong enough? Are you fit enough and strong enough to flip it while you're fatigued?
Yeah.
Can you find that extra gear? Can you find that little bit inside of you? You know, but the rest of these guys on, you know, Strength Coach Twitter, you can't teach mental toughness. Like, really? You did not grow up around the same football coaches I grew up around, because they taught me mental toughness. You know, they didn't. Yeah, they beat it into a sum, but they taught us mental toughness. I teach these guys how to kind of push beyond that little comfort zone. Yeah, you know, that's the whole idea. I thought that's what I did as a coach, was
I was just going to say,
out of your comfort zone.
That's what being a coach is. You know, you teach these young guys to do this stuff. It's okay. It's okay that it hurts, and it's okay that you're tired. You know, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. But and I tell people, like, well, you know, it's not, it's a competition all the time if you're a high level athlete.
Yeah.
I have never met a high level athlete that did not want to be the best.
Yeah.
And I'll go to Evan when Ben and I were visiting. Evan's got this grip challenge that he does with kettlebells.
He made me do it one time.
Jesus. So Ben and Evan did it. I fell out. I'm like, damn, I'm just working a stopwatch now. So the next time we did it, they were moved up in weight. I had to do the same one. And yes, I completed it. But Evan was like, I saw what you did last time, Ben. Put him down just that. I got you this time. Like, no, you don't. I got you. Like, do the whole thing. And they get done, and Evan and Ben are just staring at each other. I've already put mine down.
Right.
Hold on. They're staring at each other. Evan puts them down. Ben, 2, 3. Puts them down softer. He's like, son of a... Because the first time he introduced him to a strongman circuit, he had it all laid out, and he's like, I'm gonna get Ben. I'm like, love you, Evan, but no, you're not.
Yeah.
This guy's got a motor.
Right.
He was known as the strongest prop in the world, and he was the fittest.
Yeah.
He ran the yo-yo test with backs, and would smoke some of the backs. His brother does as well. So they did the thing, and they go through it. Evan and him are going and going and going. Ben gets done ahead of Evan. Evan was furious. And the players were torturing him.
Yeah.
And but it's competitive. It's always competitive. That's what's fun about Summer Strong. It used to be at the NSCA conferences, you'd go, we'd all lift in the morning, stuff like that, and we'd sit downstairs, we'd talk, we'd go do stuff. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Sornex is the only one you can even get on their equipment.
Yeah.
And they're having a blast. That's why they have the following that they do, because they're making it a party. And then Summer Strong, and hopefully you can get there one year.
One of these days.
Yeah. Summer Strong is just so much fun. And it started out as Pop's birthday. He wanted to be more like a York Barbell Picnic. In that, and that's what it started, and it's gotten bigger, but it still has its core group that like Evan and the guy named Rusty Witt, who's the strength coach at Troy right now, who just got done putting a video up of his backs with football. All of them, the guys that had the highest meters and the highest like speed on the catapult system, they also, all of them deadlifted 3 times their body weight. Wow. That same day.
Wow.
That same day. So he's like, strength matters. I'm like, yes, it matters. I'm fucking highlighting it, and screenshotting it and everything else. But there's always that group that goes out and messes around with the stones or all the grip stuff that Pop has. And it's, sitting there talking. But when you're talking, you're chalking up your hands with that Mighty Mitt chalk, that little stickier chalk, and you're playing with some of the grip stuff. Yeah. And to me, one of the best talks that I ever had at the NSCA was Bob Ward and Bert Hill, who was at A&M, like I said, then he was with the Lions before Matt Millen gutted it and turned it into a hit training. But they were talking, and about halfway through, they had an old blob, had some chalk, and they're like pulling out the chalk, and they're talking, and they're playing with the thing, and they're handing it over to each other, and they're doing something. Not just standing there, not just standing there preaching, but doing something with that. And I always learn more that way anyways. I did a job interview.
Carrie and I went up to that Swiss convention up in Toronto area. And, there were some great speakers and great talks, but the most stuff I learned was in the bar at the end of the night, It
used to be the best place to learn, was going out in the lobby of the hotel. Yep. Having a coffee, having something. And then, the guy's getting ready to go. And, I was a young strength coach. I'm just starting. And it was like, some of the higher ups are like, we're going to go eat. Like, what's wrong, big man? You don't eat? Like, well, I didn't. Like, oh man, you're all part of it, all together on it, and go out there, and eat and interact with these, these guys. But I did, like I said, I did an interview in Scotland. Parman told me I wasn't going to get the job. They did not want someone that looked like me over there. Right. And the Scottish Institute of Sport, but I got a free trip to Scotland, so I didn't care.
Hey, why not? Yeah.
But, I interviewed, and I didn't interview very well. I didn't feel like I interviewed very well. And the guy from Northern Ireland Institute of Sport came down to the weight room. He's like, well, we talked a little bit, and we just started talking. And he looks at me, goes, how the hell come you couldn't interview like that in that room? I don't know. The barbell changes things for me, because we're just talking. Like, this is where a strength coach should be interviewed, with tape thumbs, some chalk on his hands, and his shoes on.
I agree. The whole reason behind this podcast in general was because we would go to Highland games, and I remember being a young amateur, and the pros would be talking, and I would just be sitting there listening to them and just trying to get those little bits of information out of them. And I thought, let's have a podcast where I can get these guys on, and we'll talk, and everybody out there can be that amateur at the end of the table just trying to get bits and pieces,
And to me, even sometimes in strength coaching, there's not enough amateurs or there's not enough young ones or amateurs that'll come down to the old graybeards at the end of the table.
Yep.
Sat with UT. There's Donnie May puts a really good clinic together in January, and I got invited to the speaker's dinner. So at one end of the table is Ron McKeefrey, who and Al Vermeil, Dan John, me, and I can't remember somebody else. And we're down here and we're just bullshitting. I did not know Al Vermeil at all 5 foot frickin' 2 of them through 49 feet in high school.
Wow.
And he swears because of the Olympic lifts, because of lifting. So that's what we were talking about, being strong and everything else. And Donnie looks at his interns and all of his little young strength coaches, because he's the strength coach for Olympic sports. He's like, why are you guys here at this end of the table? You should be down at that end of the table, listening and learning and taking notes.
Yeah.
They're like, and one of them, I heard him, he's like, well, they're just talking down there. He's like, listen to what they're saying. It's the Bill Starr, telling stories that go within that.
Yeah.
It's not just a lecture on the board. This is how you do it. No, it's Al Vermeil talking about throwing 49 feet, as a sophomore or as a junior in high school.
Yeah.
Or, Dan John talking about this and that, Ron talking about this, talking about the part of strength. And, because I told someone one time, I trained a kid. That's when I first started doing private training. The Spurs didn't pay that much, but my boss was going to get me some kids to train. Well, a former player played back in the day, and his kid came, and we were talking in the weight room. Now my boss is talking about the program he's going to put him on, and I'm going to put it together, or I'm going to do it. Talking about being on a physio ball, doing this and doing that. And the dad looks at me when we're leaving. Dad says, what'd you think about your boss's program? So I give him the politically correct answer. This is a former Spurs player. This guy is so old, he got drafted by the New Orleans Jazz. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking. I'm like, he's like, come on now. I grew up in Detroit just like you. I expect really? I said, your kid is 16 years old. He's 6'7". He's weak and he's inflexible. He's not going to get flexible until he gets stronger, because that's how you hold the joint integrity. I got $20 that says he can't pull his pecker out of his pants without humping his back and leaning over like that. And the guy just started laughing. I'm like, tell you what, train him my way for 6 months. And if you don't see improvement, I'll train him my boss's way for free for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I trained that kid to a scholarship in basketball. I trained his brother to a scholarship in basketball. I trained his sister to a scholarship in volleyball. All of them. Like, mom's 5'2", dad's 6'9", 6'7", 6'5", 6 foot. I'm sorry. Casey's 5'11" and a half. Yeah. She swears that she is not going to be a 6 foot girl. But but that was Ryan, 6'7". We started. He was, he'd drive 45 minutes after practice to come train with me, and then drive home and still do his homework, still graduate in the top of his class, everything else. But we got down to where that kid snatched, and as a junior in college, he snatched 242 pounds from the floor at 6'7".
6'7". Wow.
6'7". He powered, because his strength coach is a friend of mine that was at Sam Houston State. He's at Tulane here now. And Kyle's like, texts me. He's like, you know what your boy just did? Yeah, he did a 308 power clean and then push pressed it overhead and then just dropped it. Like, I'm the man. 6'7".
Yeah.
His brother.
It was a safe bet though for you, because you understand it. You understand what heavy, hard workouts will do for an athlete.
But we did that. We ran. We threw med balls. We ran. We ran hills. And we did agility work. Yep. And we always stretched. We always did mobility work. We always did hurdle work. And like I said, I'm a huge believer in the med ball. I'm always going to use it. And if you use it right, I can make it a conditioning tool. I can make it a flexibility tool. I can make it any tool I want it to be. Yep. I trained a boxer who was an ex-world champion, Jesse James Leha, 132, 135 pounds, fought Azuma Nelson, back in the day. great fighter already, great technical fighter already, but towards the end of his career. So I see him one time out at the track, and he's telling me, I was running Spurs players. He's like, "Oh yeah, these guys got to run. This is Jerry Rice's workout. These guys got to run this, Ed. These guys got to do this." James, that's not Jerry Rice's workout. Jerry Rice runs in the mountains up in California. Yeah. I've seen some of the videos and the pictures and stuff. Oh no, Mike. And by the way, every football player in America does 16 110s.
Yeah.
But you aren't running against a stopwatch and you're not resting against a stopwatch. So therefore your running is really not going to be that effective for you. What, Mike? Well, you're little, so 14 seconds, 14, 16, 18 for big guys. I mean, 45 seconds rest, that's just what it is. And we talked and we kept on talking. So at the end of my first year, after we won our championship, he wanted me to start training them. So I taught him what pain was by running 400s and 200s. Yeah. And there was this huge, like 2.5-story wall at the track. And I had a 4-kilo med ball, and I introduced him to some real pain.
Yeah.
And we worked up to, and I had like, X amount of exercises, had this many reps, but I controlled the tempo. I controlled what, you did a couple of hard ones. You did an easy exercise, couple of hard ones, kept his heart rate up. I'm used to being the only white boy in places. Grew up in Detroit, everything else, not a big deal to me. I think it's funny. I walked into this gym in downtown San Antonio. The cut man, like the guru of the world for cut man, Joe Souza was Gotti's cut man, De La Hoya's cut man, James' cut man. He walks out of the office. He's like, "What the mother did you mother?" And it's like, and there's like a cartoon, like the last speed bag. Yeah. The last person hit, the last skip of a rope. And I'm all, oh shit. And I look at James, all 5'5" of them in the ring, and he's like doing this with his shoulders. I start laughing. I'm like, yeah, it's boxing's a hard sport for people like me. His dad, who's his trainer, and his chief second, the main trainer's like eyeballing the hell out of me. I'm like, yeah, I really did not expect you to throw with your arms.
Right. Yeah.
But just like I tell Spurs players, when we do a lot of this stuff, when you start learning how to throw with your body and your arms or less, it'll help your golf game. Yeah. It's going to help here. It's going to help there. He's like, no, I loved it. Just they moved the fight that he was going to do. He's like, they moved it up because he was the ex-world champion that they would put guys in front of to see how well they were going to do.
Yeah.
And he's like, they moved the fight up a couple of weeks. I'm like, oh, that's nothing. That's easy. So we'll do that. And, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, I went back to the gym, and his chief second says, "Hey, did you guys stop that stupid medicine ball shit throwing and everything else?" I'm like, no, actually, James threw 400 throws today.
Yeah.
At different times. I'm like, why? And he looks at me, he goes, "I think he broke my ribs." Through the big pad that they wear and everything else. And he was doing it. And James looks at me, like points his glove. He's like, "I understand what you mean now." A couple weeks later, his wife calls me. She's like, "Can you tell James to come to bed and stop posing in the mirror?" The first time he like leaned out because he was running hard. He was running, and he would still do his long, slow distance. I didn't try to take it away from him, even though I know it wasn't the greatest. That's what they do.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't going to, you can't take it away.
Right.
But I added 400s and 200s and then 200s and 100s and then short sprints, speed ladders, medicine ball throws, hurdle jumps, bleacher runs. I added all that kind of stuff as we faded into it. And, they always say he won the fight, but lost the decision.
Yeah.
The other kid, his next fight was on ESPN2 Friday Night Fights. James' next fight was on Lennox Lewis, David Tua's undercard at Vegas.
Yeah.
Then he ended up fighting for world title, 2 different world titles. He fought Costa Zoo and fought somebody else. But Costa Zoo is an animal. He was a 132-pound just destroyer.
Yeah.
So, and he destroyed him. Yeah. But the same thing, though, is we weight train, too. I mean, we deadlift. He learned how to do some power cleans. One of my Olympic swimmers, I did the same thing with him. Josh Davis was, great, 96, several gold medals in 96, gold medals and silver medals in 2000. And his wife was a better athlete. That's what he tells me. She was a volleyball player at UT while he was a swimmer at UT. Yeah. She had Angel Spazov, the former Bulgarian coach. She had Angel as her strength coach.
Wow.
So yeah, she could do cleans, she could do snatches, she could squat.
Yeah.
And Josh never did. He was just pretty with a popped up collar.
Right.
Shorts, topsiders, the whole bit. And she was like, so you got him doing hang cleans. I'm like, yeah, he got up to 135 pounds. She's like, is he making noise? I'm like, yeah, why is he making noise? Doing plyo jumps, doing this, doing that. And he was like, wow, if I would have learned this earlier in my career swimming, what could I have done?
Sure.
And you see that, Mike, you guys forget strength is the basis of all human movement.
That's a great point. Like I said, I don't know how many guys like yourself I have to get on here and say the same thing for people to realize that there's a common denominator with a lot of these athletes, and it's strength, and it's super important. It can't be faked. It can't be worked on. Doesn't matter how much you want it to not be that way and how much you say, well, you're strong enough or you're not. So, I mean,
have you ever been strong enough in your entire career throwing?
Right. No, I never was.
Always felt like I had to be just a little bit more.
Yep.
If I was but I had confidence too, though. I mean, it's the same thing, though. And I try to tell people there's confidence and a swagger that goes with being strong, like knowing that you're strong, because you've been through injuries. You've been through times like off season, hey man, just didn't hit the numbers that I want. I don't walk into a game as confident.
No, 100%.
I've picked up the 56. Thank God I'm a master. Go to 42. Pick it up and it's like, oh, fuck, that's heavy today.
Yeah.
And that's a part of it. It's the same thing for the high school coaches. Because I'll speak at a high school thing, and ever so often they're like, oh, you got arm work in there. I'm like, boy, you're training 16-year-old kids.
Yep. You better have some arm work.
You better have arm farm. You better have some arm days in there, because they 100%. Want to stretch that shirt sleeve out. They do 100%. Not want to look like it's on a wire hanger.
Yep.
They want to.
I add it in all the time.
I want to stretch my arms, my shirt sleeves out.
Yeah.
I want my grip a little better. I want my shoulders a little thicker.
Yep.
That's just how it is.
Yep.
You're training high school athletes.
Yep.
You could be training guys like me and you. I still want to look good.
100%. Get jacked, get swole.
Yep.
Hey, I got to let you go. Okay. I'm running late, but I definitely want to do this again. I'm actually going to be in New Orleans in October, so let's do it in person.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, you know what we can do is we'll get Ben on the other end.
I'm in.
We'll get Ben on it. We'll have some fun. We'll pick fun at his accent too.
I hear you. All right, brother. Thanks a lot for doing this. And
man, thank you. It's good to see you finally.
You too, man. All right, I'm going to shut this down and I'll say bye off the air.